Hello, everyone. Good afternoon on this absolutely beautiful day here in the Pacific Northwest. And with such a beautiful day, it's fine. If you want to catch us on the replay or when this is a podcast, you have 100% my go for it. Get outside. But it's Tracy Cromwell here again this week. I'm here with Dr. Jen O'Ryan, and we are doing part 3 of a 3-week series based on the concept of inclusion, equity, and diversity. And we've been discussing the last couple of weeks about, how do we get started? What does this whole concept of inclusion, equity, and diversity even mean? And then, where are we going and how did we get there? We talked about that last week. And I'm really excited. This week, we're talking about creating our plan. And before we get started, I just have a couple things I need to say because I forgot, is that, these are, if you're listening on the podcast, these are recorded live. And so anything can happen on a live broadcast. So bear with us. I know for me, right now, spring fever is happening, and I actually had a big sneezing fit right before this. So it could happen right in the middle of this podcast, and I'm a little sniffly, so bear with me. And then also, again, Dr. Jen, she has a PhD in human behavior. And so it's just incredible that she's taken on this area to help educate us and help us realize how we can move forward to create just a wonderful world for all of us to be in. And so Dr. Jen, I'm going to hand it over to you, to fill us in on our next steps.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited. And yes, I am also a fellow allergy sufferer. So can commiserate. Yes, I've invested heavily in eye drops this week, and not for the usual Seattle reasons that one might expect. I am really excited about this because of all the work that I do. My favorite part, not going to lie, is getting people to develop an action plan that they can actually take out into the world and implement all of these wonderful ideas that they have. And honestly, that's a lot of times where my clients come to me, is because they're stuck. And there's so much going on, not just today, but this week, the past year, forever, right? And it's so easy to become overwhelmed and have this sense of despair and helplessness. And so how do you manage that balance between becoming overwhelmed and unable to act and becoming frozen, versus being able to take a step back and say, yes, this is horrible. And how can I, as an individual or as a leader of an organization, how can I start to affect change? How can I start to influence the conversation? Yeah. Because as we talked about the last 2 weeks, never underestimate your ability as one person to shift that narrative, because change comes in a lot of different ways, but one way is one conversation at a time.
Right. And I admit, I have felt frozen, like just kind of in shock this week, again. and you and I were talking just before this. I had this song in my mind, and was from, it's Bruce Hornsby, and came out in 86. And some of the lyrics were, that's just the way it is. Some things will never change, but don't you believe it? And that whole song is again about, segregation and lack of equity, all of that. And that song just been going through my head, and I loved what you said. If you can repeat what you told me, if you remember what you said, it made a lot of sense.
Yes, that is one thing that stuck with me from my undergrad years more than I think just anything else. I had an amazing psychology professor who was convinced that when you have a song stuck in your head that just comes up again and again and again, and it's not because you heard it on a commercial or you heard it in the grocery store or something like that, but it's just innately inside your head, take a step back, because that is, she felt, something that your subconscious is working on and wants you to think more, bring more front of mind. She called it the soundtrack of your subconscious. And so if you take a step back and actually look at not just the lyric that's running through your head, because that might be the only one you remember, but actually what's the basis of the song, and really evaluating that and say, what is my subconscious working through?
Yeah. Yeah. And I got thinking about that again, looking at what we got to talk about today, is what is creating a plan. And I wanted to focus on that. Well, don't you believe it? Meaning we can make change, which I do see happening, although, I know it's just so hard. And this week, like I said, I felt frozen. And so I'm really excited to talk to you again, because sometimes you just don't even know what to say anymore. It's just like,
yeah. Because when does it end, right? And it's like the basic physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
And that's where it seems like it's so funny, because your passion and my passion seem so different in nutritional mindfulness, integrated health, and then inclusion, diversity in a healthy workplace. But they're so closely aligned, because it is that yo-yo that you experience. It's like you've got sustained effort, excuse me, with good intent. But if you don't have the right tools and mindset to make it sustainable, we just fall back to our old habits.
And I think too, when we think about this, it just hit me as well, is, just like with, I think if we can keep that curve going, that relative curve going up, but the process is still, up and down, up and down, up and down. But if we can keep that hope in this trending line, hopefully this, that things are and can and will change and continue to evolve,
Yeah. And just like that song that's running through your head, right? We have so many narratives that are running through our heads. And most of those narratives aren't even from us. There's something that was, given to us in our very early stage that we may not remember. And so things like the narratives like, oh, politics really doesn't affect me, or I really don't watch the news because it's too difficult. And I tell people, like, yeah, it's difficult, but that's also reality for people. And so we have an obligation as humans operating in this collective society to take an active role in changing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you've got those narratives in your head, it's just like, evaluate this. It's no, this affects all of us.
I think too, because it can be so overwhelming. And sometimes it's like, okay, I just can't process it. My mind is having such a hard time processing it that sometimes you need to step away, but don't disassociate that it's not happening, or how do I want to say, it's this is going on in some people's lives. And if we can put ourselves in their shoes, with empathy, I guess, and realize we may not solve it all, but we can, spread a message. We can, like you're educating people, which is incredible. So, yeah. So what is our plan?
So our plan is, it's really twofold, right? Because we all know that control is an illusion, but to a certain extent, there are things that we can control, and things that are either more chaos or opportunistic. And so I want people to have a plan for both. So the plan that is more around controlling and understanding my narrative and how that narrative is driving my actions and my decisions on a level that I'm not even aware of is outlining what is the change you want to see. And I know that sounds very woo-woo, right? It starts with that.
Not really.
Yeah, but really it's like, we're humans and we're empathetic. And what is the change you want to see? And then writing that out, taking a step and evaluating, is this a change I want to see because it will make me feel good about myself? Or is this a change I want to see because it really is going to have an impact on other people's lives? And that differentiation will help you frame what are the actions you need to take. Because if we're doing it just to feel better about ourselves, that's not really going to last, and it's going to lead to more unintended consequences. If we're doing it because we want to make the world a little bit better, then map out the steps to, how do I make that change? Is it something that I need to go out and start mentoring youth and giving them more opportunities in the industry that I'm in that might not have, a lot of representation? Is it going out and supporting different organizations? Is it educating myself and reading? Is it supporting Black business owners? Yes, it is. And diversifying the people with whom you do business. It's all these different things, but it all goes back to what is the change you want to see? And
I love that.
we kind of struggle between going very, very aspirational, and we've got to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And we do, but sometimes, actually all the time, and I'm sure in your industry, you're going to agree with this, it's just starting and consistency that is more important. Because if you got this big aspirational goal and it just sits on the shelf and you look at it once in a while, you dust it off at the end of December because you feel like you should, it's not going to benefit anybody. And it just makes you feel bad about yourself, which is a double negative. So starting out and being consistent and learning as you go is more important, in my opinion, than having some earth-shattering epiphany.
And I think that's with everything because I'll associate again with again, our lives are all integrated. Our food, our social environment, our relationships, our finances, all of that, our career, education, it's all connected. And so that's where, if we were to look at our lives and want to make improvements, the time's going to pass anyway. So why don't we, with that, spend a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is a day, just start, just to pick something, because it will compound, so that moment of acknowledging someone, like we talked about last week, and with a, hey, how's it going? Acknowledgement of others, or practicing, being more present, or reading, like you said, we can spend hours and hours watching reruns of television while the world is needing us,
Yes.
So.
Yes. And it also goes back to that, like I am the worst. I wouldn't say an aggressive driver, but I'm an aggressive driver, and I'm working on that. That is a gap for me. It's dangerous. So one thing that I really took to practice over the last couple of years is to give people grace. So if somebody is at a stoplight and they don't immediately accelerate when the light turns green, instead of, hammering on the horn and freaking out and driving my blood pressure up, taking a step and just like, maybe they just got bad news. Maybe they just, you know what I mean? You have no idea what they're struggling with. And we can make so many assumptions, unless they're looking at their phone, and then that's just bad on them. But we make so many assumptions about why people do things, and we react and we overreact, and just giving that space and taking a breath and saying, it is not the end of the world if I miss that light cycle.
Well, this brings me up to one experience where I think someone would have viewed me as the most wackadoodle crazy woman driving on the road one day. Was I had been really ill, and my daughter was maybe 2, and I was just kind of at the point where I was able to go to the grocery store and get some food. So it was my big first trip out in a little while. Took her to the store, and I was just in a daze grocery shopping with her. I had a full thing of groceries. And then I looked up at the clock on the wall of the grocery store, and it was the time when my son was going to get dropped off at the bus stop, and he was in kindergarten or first grade. Oh my word. And there was no one there I knew to greet him, because I had just like I said, I lost track of time, and I just, and so I was this lunatic trying to get home to my son, who I knew was going to be wondering, where's mom, how come no one's home, and getting scared outside, and so I just like, it's like this, I get to my son, so we just don't know, what's happening in people's lives. So,
and it's an opportunity, in some cases, an opportunity to connect humanity. Like I've spent a lot of time traveling, and I've seen people in airports just sobbing uncontrollably, and I'm like, step back, very safe arms, not a threat. And it's like, are you okay? Can I get help for you? And sometimes they're just having whatever they're having, and they're like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But at least checking and saying, are you okay? And I've actually had people spill all kinds of, not secrets, but things that they normally would probably keep to themselves, just because they're in that vulnerable position. And you say, "Can I help?" And they see another human, and they're like, "Blah! Here comes everything."
Oh, yes.
But that's just, it's so powerful. And if we walk through with blinders on, just obsessively looking at our clocks and our watches, then we miss that. Although yours is absolutely guaranteed. That I would do the same.
Yeah, it's like yeah. So just knowing and because you mentioned in creating the plan, assessing the situation and do the internal work first. Do they need, or did they ask for your help? And it's almost reminds me of when I took my first aid class. You see a challenge, you assess the situation and then do the process, and then does someone need your help, and did they ask for it? And then, could your help or your statement be valuable and helpful or not? You mentioned something about that. So when you mean assessing a situation in regard to your, me, I was talking about first aid, but can you explain, because it's creating a plan of being prepared. So
Yeah, and that is the other side of the plan, is the more chaotic, opportunistic situations that you can find yourself in. And if you're mindful, you can, I mean, the things to assess is the person in immediate danger, and do you need to call for backup, like call for security or somebody to come help you, or gather other people around to help. Or is it a situation where you might be misinterpreting and you just kind of want to observe and make sure that if something does happen or is happening, that you are able to intervene, but also making sure that you're not so rushed to intervene that you might be putting yourself in a dangerous situation. There's an opportunity where I was listening to people sitting behind me that the one person was being very threatening and intimidating to the other person, and in such a low voice that I think it was probably just me and my colleague who could hear. And that would have been extraordinarily dangerous, not just for me in that moment to, spin out my chair and say, who are you to talk to them like this? But which is what I wanted to do. But it also causes danger potentially for that person, because if they have to go home together or they have to ride together, that anger towards me is going to get lashed out on them. And so I went up and I talked to the employees there, and I'm like, I don't know what the situation is, but this is my concern, and I'm just telling you because in case something happens. But it's also making sure that you're helping in the right way and not over helping. This goes back to, are you doing it to make yourself feel better, or are you doing it because there's an actual need?
Right. And I like the concept too of just, I think too, some people, they just know you're aware is very helpful. That they're seen, like we've talked about. Are you, is someone being seen? And when they know they're being seen, that can help just immensely.
Because especially look at the situations that are going on now with the killings. So much of that has been going on forever. And the reason that we're seeing it, and the reason that it's being litigated and it's being challenged finally, is that because it's undeniable. Because we have computers in our phone and filming devices in our phones, and it's those observers who are actually not just witnessing, but trying to intervene, trying to get protection, trying to get backup, trying to prevent the situation from its unfortunate and tragic and preventable outcome. That's what I mean, is like it being very aware and present, and knowing that could happen, and knowing how you would respond. How the different ways that you could respond. It's almost like if you think about a natural disaster, if you see a car wreck, like oftentimes our immediate response is just to freeze, because our brain can't process what we're actually seeing. And so it goes into this buffering protection mode to say, am I really seeing this? Is this really happening? And just knowing how to interrupt that in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is a great question. Then the next one was channeling anxiety into action, take a stand, make it sustainable, overcoming sense of despair and helplessness. So what plan for that? What do you recommend there?
That's a big one, because it is really easy to get to that place where we're having the same conversations that we were having 50 years ago and 150 years ago. And we're still struggling to overcome that. And so that to me is where it comes back to, again, having that action plan of what is it you're working on, and taking a step back when you need to, but not, and you said this so well, you use such a good term for this, not taking a step so far back that you're disassociating. Because, the people that I talk to that, they don't want to watch the news because it's difficult for them, or they don't want to follow different events and happenings because it's too much for them. And there are reasons for that. There are reasons to take a step back, but you have to understand that this is really affecting people in a very real way. And as part of a collective society, we have an obligation to help change that. There's my cat. Sorry.
No, that's fine. What's your cat's name again?
Callie the Destroyer.
Callie the Destroyer.
She likes to shred paper, shoes, and spiders. So
yeah. Mine, Annabelle, she if I put any kind of papers on the floor, or I put a lot of sticky notes in all the books I read, and she has access, she shreds all my notes, and I can't tell what I wrote. So
yeah, you're like, thanks for that.
All right. So Kitty made up her
She's made
debut
her
on
cameo.
the
She made
show.
her appearance, so that's good.
Yes.
But the other thing that I really wanted to focus on, because we do talk a lot about bystanders and intervening, but we're also human and we're not always going to respond the way that we think we will, right? And the one thing that I would really want to caution your listeners and everybody too is, if you're in a situation and it doesn't go to plan, or you're afraid, or you don't speak up, or don't go home and beat yourself up about that.
Yeah.
Because we're not always going to be able to act the way that we think that we would. And just take that as a learning and go from there.
Yeah, I know sometimes I can have scenario where something happens in my, in front of me, and I'm like, or someone says something to me and I'm like,
Yep.
And I go home, and then later it's like, okay, you're 5 hours late, boom, boom, this is what I would do, but I thought it's just like,
But that's the perfect time to then write it down and put it on a Post-it. I'm a huge fan of Post-its, and put it on your mirror and just keep it someplace visible, because it's a learning. We're gonna fail, and we're not gonna do what we thought we would.
Yeah.
And we're gonna freeze. And also I wanted to touch a little bit on, because there is this concept of a passive bystander where people don't engage. And there's actually a lot of reasons for that. If somebody's, has PTSD, or potentially was a victim of a traumatic situation, they might not be able to intervene and respond. And so just, if you see somebody who's not taking action, they might not be able to. They might not have the same capacity for it, or the resources that we do. Like, everybody's got their own level of resiliency and support and all of that. And so not necessarily to judge people who aren't able to respond to the situation.
Yeah. And you think about that too, because when something's happened, you're not ready for, say, an emergency situation, or you see someone, like we were just talking about, being, verbally, attacked or something. I know, it was interesting. I take this one scenario when I was in third grade, and we had a couple standard bullies in school, and interesting enough, they were girls. And I always remember being just terrified to go to school when my sister Gretchen wasn't going to be there, because she grew faster than most everybody. And so she was like our guardian, and I would be like, Mom, don't send me to school. We're going to get beat up. I don't want to get beat up at school. Well, one day this gal, she actually literally had one of my classmates, I'm third grade, and she's antagonizing one of our friends. And we're literally in a circle, kind of in this weird circle, watching this happen. And then she took my friends by the hair, and she was literally slamming her head into the door. And I'm like, nobody's doing anything. But my brain was like running through all the different scenarios, also of what I was, like things I've been said, taught, be safe, don't fight, you want to be this or that. And then also you need to step in and help. But I knew I was going to get annihilated if I stepped in there. It was really a weird scenario. So if we think about that, and I did, I went in there, I was terrified, and I was like, don't do that. And she turned on me, so we did. It ended up, she had me in a lock, shoulder to shoulder, and she's like just in my face. And then I wanted to kick her in the shins. And then right then I heard my mom, now listen, you never want to hurt anybody. I stopped. I was like, so I was in so much turmoil, and so I wiggled away and I ran. I remember I was like just hauling butt around the school, and she's chasing me. And I get up to the recess teacher, and I'm like, she's going to get me. Okay, this is 1976. She's going to get me.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, honey, you got 5 more minutes left of recess. It'll be fine. I'm like, she's going to kill me.
Yeah, it's like, you're in the third grade. Your life capacity experience is this. You don't know this actually could be the end of you.
Yeah, but when what hit me was that too, you're in a scenario, or you're seeing something you don't expect to see. And your brain is trying so hard to process and make a decision on how to move forward. And you only have seconds to make a choice.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and I love what you brought up. We don't know who's standing there, what their experiences were, and why they maybe didn't step forward, but yeah. Anyway, so everyone, no bullying. If there's little kids watching.
Everyone's watching. No bullying. Yes.
Everyone watching.
Yeah.
No
And that's the thing, is
bullying.
and sometimes that because we're so conditioned to do that, to circle and just like everybody else is doing this, I don't know what to do. And then somebody just says, stop it. And
Mhm.
that can be enough of a disruption to
Yeah.
shift it. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
how scary for you though? Did you at
It
least get
was
to go to the nurse's office or
terrifying.
something?
What's that?
Did you at least get to go to the nurse's office or something? Because that sometimes
No, because even
with
back then
you.
I had the option. I could have run into the office, but that school was just, I won't even name it. It's not
Mm,
worth it. But I was more terrified of the office staff
oh,
and saving my life out on the playground.
it's like Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome. It's like,
Place goes like, yeah, but Gretchen was like, she was like our shining knight in armor, and she just didn't put up with any of it. The boys tried to, mess with the girls or any other girls, and she just walk on up, and yeah, they wouldn't mess with her. So
that's awesome.
but I love that, so yeah, and I think too, this one thing I always thought too is as we grew up and became adults, I had assumed bullying would stop, and I realized how you phrase that. We do have adult bullies, and
Mhm.
it's just something I think like with humans that we need to do more evolving.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a sad thing because especially in organizations or in the community, right? It's
Mhm.
bullying. We think about bullying as like your experience, right? Or a
Mhm.
Christmas Story or something like that, or like
Mhm.
the Back to the Future, the Marty McFly, Biff, the bully,
Mhm.
right? But especially in organizations, it's about silencing. It's about
Mhm.
stifling different perspectives, and it's
Yeah.
about making sure that everybody's kept in check and nothing
Mhm.
changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's once you start to look at it that way in the organization, it's like, oh, we don't actually have to wait for somebody to start throwing punches. It actually is so many other things before it gets to
Mhm.
that stage.
Yeah. Yeah. So, before we go, I do want to say too, so I did have fun last week. I did some of my homework, which we talked
Yes.
about, but I had decided I wanted to be more present and make sure I saw people and said hello. And it really went well. I don't have time to go into all the detail, but I just made some extra effort, especially with COVID and everything. We've got masks on, and it's very hard to smile at people. They might see your eyes smiling, but it does take a little bit extra effort to make sure they can hear you or something. But I really recommend that, just the acknowledgement or interaction with people, just to
Yeah.
be seen.
And outside of that, outside of the experience of having that interaction with people, how did you feel? Like, did that feeling stick with you
It
for
did.
the rest of the day?
It did. Even to this day, it happened. Trying to think of what day that was. It was probably Monday. I think it was Monday. One specific event happened that just, I feel really good. And I think it also made the other person feel really seen, and as opposed to just doing the standard, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of scenario. And so I know that was your homework for the overachievers last week. And I'm just going to, focus on doing that, because I think too, sometimes we don't want to say hi or interact with somebody because we may feel, like we'll be rejected, or they don't hear you, or whatever. And we're the ones actually bringing that energy to the situation based on our own insecurities. And so if we practice seeing others, it'll get easier and easier, and
Mhm.
just be, you know,
Yeah.
something we just
And
do.
And I love how you mentioned bringing in your energy, because we do. And again, that sounds very woo, but it's we
We
have an
do.
energy. I mean, you how many times you've been in a room and somebody walks in and they just have this sense about them.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
that shifts the vibe in the room, and it can actually lift people up and get
Yeah.
the conversation to a different level.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes too, like you said as well, we don't know what's going on for that other person right now.
Mhm.
And so giving space to find out more is really beneficial. And why is that energy that way? And again, sometimes we just bring preconceived notions of energy with us
Mhm.
that our mind has made up, meaning, made up some fairy tale, or not a fairy tale, but just made it
Yeah.
up, you know, it
We're very
doesn't
creative.
even exist. and we bring that forward, and again, and too, it can come from, our past experiences, and our brain doesn't realize it's not the law.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not that, we're not that third grader who's in imminent danger right now. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, knowing what I know now, it'd be fun to go back and be that third grader, because I'd handle it a lot better.
Exactly.
I'd still say yes, but it would have been like, "Grr."
Yeah, exactly.
I would have hauled her butt to the office. That's what I would have done. And I just have to say this too, because I wrote about the experience in my book, but was what was going on in her life. And this gives me like, what was going on in this poor girl's life that she had to come to school with that energy and this anger and frustration.
Yeah.
That she would lash out and beat up other kids.
Yeah. And it's not even necessarily that it's your role to fix them, right? But it's just your role to understand that something else is going on over here and keep yourself safe. But
it was heartbreaking when I think about it to the next level of what was going on. So
especially in 1976, that was
and now, like, here I was, in 76, and just don't know anything about what's really going on in the world at that time, and but yeah. So okay, so let's see. We talked about assessing situations, channeling anxiety into action, and sometimes too, I don't know what you think about this, is the concept of asking your brain, okay, well, with everything going on, and we want to make change, is just saying, well, what do you think we could do? What could we do? And let's start thinking about it, and it plugs it in there, and then it'll start looking for a resolution.
Yes.
And maybe then finally something will come to you. But
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. No, I love that, because it's also going to make you more receptive when these opportunities pop up. You won't be looking for them, but you'll be more receptive to them, and you'll see them when they're there.
Yeah.
And you'll already feel anxiety is a good thing, because it keeps us safe, but also breaking through that anxiety and saying, I am equipped. I know what I'm capable of, and this is what needs to happen.
Yeah. Let's see. And then also, again, we talk about understanding others that might freeze, that have a reason for being disengaged. Again, everyone has a story, has a past. So homework, next steps, and go do good things, you say. So give us some homework.
So my all-time favorite homework is to practice and refine. And again, it's not going to go to script. This is just a dress rehearsal, but practice what you would say. And like, if you feel like you didn't respond the way you wanted to, like you were talking about, you have all these things pop in your head. Oh, I should have said that. Write those down, keep them visible, because that's going to help you build that toolkit, and also the muscle memory of being able to respond. And then just this is always my one of my biggest pieces of advice: be informed consumers of research. Because right now, especially social media, the internet, there's so many things, it's just clickbait. And if you actually read the article and read to the original source, that's not necessarily what it's saying. And so read the article and check the sources.
Yeah, take that moment longer. And if you can't take the moment, then don't share it, don't post it, don't get caught up in it.
We're all susceptible to that. I actually have to take a step back sometimes. It's like, to what end? To what end does this do if I post it?
Yeah, I've definitely, I think back, and again, that's that thing, we get caught and we get upset and we want change to happen, and just taking the step back to, is it safe? Does it make sense? Well, add this, is it true? Did it happen? And make see if you can get that ability to not fall for the clickbait. And that goes with food too. Food science, enough to drive me crazy.
Oh, I bet. Yes.
It's like a lot of it's clickbait. And then the headline is a certain way, but then you go read through the whole article, and at the very last, they could have left the whole article out, but there's still more to learn about it. They'll like negate their whole article.
Yes, at the very end.
Yeah.
Even if I melt away my muffin top in 30 minutes a month, that's weird. I figured I could.
So it's the same with a lot that's going on in the world
Mhm.
today, and it take us as consumers and consumers of information. I love that. Take that extra step.
Yep.
Okay.
Lead it all the way.
Yeah. And keep learning and asking questions.
Yes. Curiosity. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, Dr. Jenna Orion, I am so happy that you joined me for 3 episodes. It's been an eye opener for me. I still know I have a lot to learn. And I just hope everyone, I think as humans, we need to know that we don't know everything.
Mhm.
We're never going to know everything, but we can, know where we're headed. Like you said, what do we want to see in the world? And then how can we help become what we want to see in the world? And I know I've read that, be what you want to see in the world.
Be the change. Yes.
Be the change you want to see. Yeah.
I can't believe I'm blanking on it. Gandhi. Thank you.
Yes.
Gandhi. Yes.
Yeah. And so if we can realize that and then take moments daily, just to practice, just like if you're wanting to learn how to eat different food,
Mhm.
well, we want to learn how to bring more, equity and, like we said, inclusion and diversity. And that can start with each one of us.
Yes.
And
It has to.
how many millions of people are on the planet? And each person just,
Little effort, consistent.
Yeah. It can happen.
Yeah.
It can happen. So anyway, well, thank you for being a voice for in such a needed area. And, what we could always do too is about 6 months or so, we should check back in and have you back on.
Oh, we'll do a check-in. Yes, I like
That'd
that.
be fun. Yeah.
Yes. Follow up.
Yep. Okay. All right,
Awesome.
everybody. So we'll close down the broadcast and again, see what you can do. Be the change you want to see in the world. And we can make it happen. So, okay. Happy weekend. And I'll see everybody next week. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
Bye.